I'm sorry, what did I call? Where are you located?
Ben Avenue.
What city?
Fort Worth.
Okay, well, I was in jail on false charges, and they told me that they did some reports to CPS for Adult Protective Services and my daughter's abuse. And I wanted to know because I never got a call or any conclusion of that investigation.
Okay, but you're saying Adult Protective Services?
As well as Child Protective Services, 2 different divisions, I guess you can say.
And it is from
And what did I call? What is this?
Child Protective Services?
What location? What city?
The one on Ben Avenue in Fort Worth.
Okay. So how do I get an update to a report?
Let me give you a number where you can call.
What number is this to?
This is to the records management.
I can't hear you. It's the what?
Records management. That's where they would have any documents.
Okay, so let me make sure I understand. So when child abuse is reported in Fort Worth, you premeditate that there's not going to be any kind of investigation, and then you direct them to records instead of Child Protective Services to a caseworker?
Ma'am, you just asked me for a copy.
Okay, we're deflecting, ma'am. If a report was done to Child Protective Services?
If there was a report made,
and then I'm trying to speak with a caseworker regarding the the abuse report.
Do you have a name of a caseworker, ma'am?
That you haven't looked up anything, you're being rude, like I've had the experience and endure years.
I'm trying to answer your question.
Okay, so typically when someone's reporting child abuse, you don't premeditate that and direct them just to records because they get an investigation if it's a normal person.
Ma'am, that's not what you asked for.
Okay, well, there was a misunderstanding. I'm sorry. I just thought that, self-explanatory that you would assume that there would be an investigator and a case manager. I wouldn't think that you would direct me immediately to records to get nothing resolved.
You said you needed some paperwork.
So if someone reported child abuse, isn't there supposed to be a caseworker?
But you asked for paperwork in order to be...
Ma'am, we're deflecting. What's your name? What's your name?
Jasenia.
I'm sorry, what? I can't hear you. What was your name?
Jasenia.
Jasenia.
My supervisor's name if you want to contact her.
I just don't understand for 5 years, ma'am, why it has been impossible to report child abuse in the United States. I think it's pretty sick. Is the United States conspirator in my child's abuse and interference with child custody crimes? And abusing power to keep my family in it? Because this behavior is just not acceptable and it doesn't really make a lot of sense. I don't know why you would distract and deflect from me finding out what's going on with this report as I've experienced years, ma'am. Are we going to get down to the bottom of the investigator, finding out who the investigator is for this child abuse report? Calling the Fort Worth Child Protective Service location.
Give you the documentation number.
I just want to know who the case manager is, ma'am.
Okay, and that is what you could have asked me. I'm so sorry.
Okay, well, we're deflecting, ma'am. I'm calling Child Protective Services of Fort Worth about a child abuse report, and I'd like to know who I need to speak with regarding it, the case manager over it. When someone reports child abuse, don't they investigate it, or do they just do records and ignore it? What's the procedure?
No, ma'am. That is not the question. Can I just give you my supervisor's name?
I don't know why I keep getting forwarded over to supervisors to have to repetitively repeat myself. This would be abusive, ma'am. Hello? Why, you're getting low, ma'am. You're getting low.
You are not understanding what I'm trying to tell you.
You're getting low, ma'am, and you're deflecting and gaslighting me. This is psychological damage from call to call to call for years. Are you there, ma'am?
Can I give you my supervisor's number so that you can...
I don't know. I just called Child Protective Services in Fort Worth, and we're deflecting, and you're staging conflict to get out of giving me the information that I called for. So this is how you can make someone, frame them for mental illness, violate them from call to call to call, and then when they lose their patience, blame it on them. But it's not normal behavior to call Child Protective Services, and then why do you just say, you told me to go to the car and the car was locked. Each call I'm on, I'm getting interrupted. Let's see, because you just told me to go to the car and it was locked. Hello? I'm not letting you speak. My family members interrupted me too. Trying to force me to go to the car instead of trying to check on her niece that she knows that I've been robbed of for years. Okay.
Okay. Can I go ahead and provide you the number to my supervisor and maybe she can understand what you're needing?
No, ma'am. I didn't want to speak with a case manager. You wouldn't look up in the computer system. You have no idea who I am, and then you're forwarding me to a supervisor, which really doesn't make a lot of sense.
Ma'am, because I'm not understanding what you're needing. You're asking me for one thing and then you're getting upset at me and telling me something else.
You're
So
deflecting. This is narcissistic abuse, ma'am. I have called Child Protective Services trying to check on a case, and you're unwilling to give it to me because you're conspiring with the crime. You have not looked up anything on the computer. Is that a possibility to find out who my caseworker is?
Ma'am, I'm trying to speak with you, but you're getting at
Ma'am, this is abusive to experience this for years. Can we get down, instead of you staging conflict and blaming me for your crimes, can you go ahead and look in the system to find out what has went on with this child abuse report?
And I can do that, but I'm trying
Okay, well then just do it and stop gaslighting me, ma'am. This is abusive to experience this years for call after call, being blamed for someone else's crimes.
Ma'am, let me transfer you, okay?
So you don't want to look it up. It's sick. Someone is paying to keep me away from my kids, which is criminal, and has not had any consequences for it. An army full of people that enforce his crimes and abuse. Family member all in, locking the door, telling me to go to the car, interrupting Child Protect. Her own niece was once in tears. So now she's interrupting. Then this lady, this neighbor that keeps coming out watching me. There's just sit in the car. Stalking used to be a crime. Gang stalking. And then, it's something to even have family members involved in terror. I have already reported this. I know people didn't believe me. So we got neighbors looking. We got family members interrupting. Go to the car, go to the car. Then I go to the car, it's locked. I send a text, it's locked. So she wouldn't open the door, so I sat on the step. Then interrupted me again. Go to the car, go to the car. So there's things that he is not playing games with. He's not playing games with housing. He's not playing games with the support system. He's not playing games with the financial abuse. Those are things that are very, very vital for his abuse. Those are things that he don't tolerate no matter who. He wants this financial abuse to keep me in, because it's easier to frame someone and mistreat them if you can prove to others that person doesn't have value. So if they're on the streets living in a tent and you can have them look, and on this cyberbullying, they don't show what I've experienced for my appearance to be like that. They have taken off wigs. They have taken pictures multiple times. They have lied and schemed and said that they couldn't find my initial photo. And then have went back when I was in jail and had make sure inmates didn't braid my hair. And sometimes I've even been interrupted crying. The whole worst picture, I was interrupted crying up under the cover. Then they lied and scammed because they saw that my hair was all over my head and told me to take another picture saying that they had lost my initial mugshot. Sometimes they take the mugshots 5-6 times in a row so they can get the most horrid-looking mugshot you have ever seen your whole life. And that way they can say, see, look, I told you she didn't have value. Look at that picture. Sometimes I've had on wigs, and then right before the picture, they have taken the wig off and then even chuckled and laughed right before. So you may say, well, just go in person. If you're getting all this and you believe it's scammers, that I was arrested in person. They arrested me in their con in person. First, she couldn't get her story straight. Then the lie was I hit her, the security guard. Then when they got caught in that con, they realized that I had recorded that lie that she hit her. Then they were like, oh, snap, plan B. Then plan B was criminal trespass. Someone had already paid for the arrest. He wanted me to lose that apartment because I just locked myself up in the apartment when he was upset. I blocked all of his minions. And then I distanced myself from all these abusers that would call and start arguments. So he was losing power. So he needed me to be homeless. So then he could set up pickpocketing and all the chaos that's going on with my card. Like I told my family, my relatives, if they're playing all these games with the card, what if I would have been out on the streets? I couldn't get in hospitals, all these games with domestic violence organizations, shelters. What can you imagine for a person like me what I would have had to endure? How would I have eaten? How would I have ate? Here are these holes that you have to see to believe. And a lot of times they'll just have you on hold, don't have their lie together, and just hang up. So what happened in jail, they kept coming trying to bully me. I had to speak with the FBI, and they had set me up to speak with MHMR, and they were trying to set me up, frame me with mental illness to validate why I didn't go to court. I never did go to court. The corruption was so extreme, they were releasing me, and I didn't know if I had to charge because I couldn't go to court. So I asked staff, can you please tell me, because they wouldn't let me appear at court, and then they claimed that they didn't know. I said, this is unbelievable. What do you mean that you don't know? Has there ever been an inmate in this country that was released and don't know if they have to charge? So when I escalated and they realized how insane that was, they went ahead and told me that the charge was dismissed. But I was about to get released, and they didn't even want me to know what happened with my charge. I wasn't allowed. I have never heard of anything like that, of anyone in this country that government was releasing and we didn't want them to know if they had to charge. It spent time in jail, never went to court. In addition to that, had time served and still was in jail months. That is kidnapping. Clearly mental illness from the government. When you get so criminal, because he wanted me to lose the apartment. So he needed to, keep me in jail past the time served. So then when they realized, this is kind of sick, then they said, well, we need to save ourselves. Okay, well, we'll blame it on her mental illness. So then they concocted that you're in jail and we can't release you with time served because you're mentally ill.
Hi, good morning, ma'am. My name is Ariana. I'm a human service technician out here in Tarrant County. How can I help you this morning?
Yes, your representative was rude, and I just wanted to know the status of this investigation and find out who the case manager was. And she didn't want me to know. She wouldn't even look up the case.
Okay, well, we can absolutely help you with that, and I'm so sorry about that this morning. Let me see. So you're trying to look for the status on your case. Can I go ahead and get your full name and your date of birth so I can look you up on our system?
Since you work there, if you could just tell me, I was in jail on false charges for trying to report my child's abuse. And then they said they did a child abuse report and with Adult Protective Services. I don't have the number right now, but they did supply case numbers. And no, I'm sorry. It was not in jail. They did it when they detained me on false pretenses. They detained me on false pretenses and took me to JPS. And I reminded them that them trying to frame me for mental illness and I'm reporting abuse was criminal. Because not reporting suspected child abuse is a Class A misdemeanor, in some circumstances a felony. When I kept reminding them of that, they went ahead and said that they did the child abuse report and gave me case numbers. So I'm calling now because they didn't call me and didn't do a proper investigation. So I want to know who the caseworker was, because there's a conspiracy to interference with child custody crimes. You have a state worker that made false statements, which is a state jail felony crime, to CPS. But some kind of way CPS is covering for it. To this day, I still have not had access to my daughter because of these false statements by a majority of people, a lot of people, which is criminal. So a family court let this man disappear off the docket. So then now, whenever I go to report these crimes, the police department shows up to cover for these powerful people so they don't get their prison sentences, which is still criminal. So then each location I'm going to try to get assistance, they're sabotaging legal representation and programs and assistance so these powerful people don't get the consequences for their criminal activity. So CPS is covering for them and denying me assistance and not investigating these reports to cover for these powerful people and their criminal activity.
Okay. So I'm going to keep asking you just a few questions just so I can get some more information. So please get to the bottom of this. Okay?
You took my date, you got my name and date of birth, and you don't see the report number. You got to ask more questions.
I'm going to ask what the report numbers that they gave you for you.
I don't have the report numbers. I was stating that. People use catch-22s to sabotage any information.
And what county were these cases
I reported it at JPS. I'm repeating myself again. When I was at the mental health part of JPS, they were trying to cover for it, and I told them they were committing a crime, and they went ahead and reported it to Fort Worth. I just don't understand how many people it would be in Fort Worth that the investigation for that with just that name. I don't understand why it would be so hard for you to find it for 5 years. If Fort Worth is the only location that it could possibly be, I have a very uncommon name. Why would it be so hard?
This was from 5 years back?
No, I just reported it at JPS in February. Are you looking in your system? You got my name and you got my date of birth. You don't see it?
There are quite a few items here.
The most recent. And if it's quite a few items, who was the caseworker assigned to any of them? Ma'am, are you trying to help or are you trying to sabotage?
Ma'am, I'm looking inside of our database.
And what was your name again?